Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking you on an incredible journey to an island nation that often conjures images of pure paradise. Mauritius.
That's right.
Think idyllic beaches, sapphire lagoons, and an abundance of exotic natural beauty. It's the kind of place that has inspired poets for centuries.
And while that postcard image is absolutely true, our mission today is to go, well, far beyond it. We've got a stack of sources, everything from a brief history of Mauritius to detailed research papers, and we're going to uncover the complex, sometimes surprising, and ultimately inspiring journey of how this unique island became the model country it is today.
Our goal is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge from these sources so you can truly understand the resilience, the cultural tapestry, and the economic miracle that define Mauritius.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating story of geology, exploration, colonialism, and incredible human spirit. So let's jump in.
Let's do it. Let's start with the very foundations of this volcanic gem in the Indian Ocean. Geographically, Mauritius is an island nation about 2,000 kilometers off the southeast coast of Africa.
Right. Quite a ways out there.
Yeah, it's approximately 870 kilometers east of Madagascar, and its closest neighbor, Reunion Island, is just 170 kilometers to its west.
What's truly remarkable about Mauritius, even before we get to its human story, is its origin. Our sources highlight that this island literally emerged from volcanic eruptions some 10 million years ago.
10 million years, imagine.
I imagine that explains its generally hilly topography, with the highest point, Mount Piton, standing at 828 meters. And for some scale, it's about 58 kilometers north-south by 47 kilometers east-west.
Pretty compact, yeah.
With its capital, Port Louis, in the northwest.
It does indeed explain the topography, and here's where it gets really interesting in terms of its strategic significance. Mauritius boasts an exclusive economic zone, or EEZ, of 2.7 million square kilometers.
Wow.
To put that in perspective, that's among the world's largest EEZs in relation to its actual landmass.
The tiny island, massive ocean territory.
Exactly. This enormous maritime territory hints at its vital strategic importance throughout history, and maybe even more so today.
That's a massive area. It makes you wonder what this island looked like before any human set foot on it. I picture the descriptions of poets like Lamartine and Voltaire, inspired by its exotic natural beauty.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially those stunning southern and eastern coasts with their extensive sandy beaches and those emerald and sapphire blue lagoons, all protected by vibrant coral reefs.
It was a true untouched paradise, initially uninhabited for millennia after its volcanic origin.
Just pristine.
Yeah. This pristine environment was home to unique species like the iconic dodo bird and giant tortoises. In fact, early Europeans nicknamed it the Island of the Dodo.
Right, because they were everywhere.
Because these birds were so prevalent and unique to Mauritius.
But of course, this paradise gained was tragically paradise lost. The arrival of humans had a devastating impact.
A huge impact.
It's striking to read that today there's a virtual absence of rare indigenous forests. Our sources attribute this to a combination of factors: fires, destruction for sugar cultivation,
Sugar, yeah, that's a big one.
coastal development, and the introduction of competing species. It's a stark reminder that over 70% of native vertebrates on Rodriguez and Mauritius became endangered or extinct within just 400 years of human interaction.
400 years. It's depressingly quick, isn't it?
It really is.
Absolutely. A profound ecological shift. And it's precisely this human arrival that sets the stage for what our sources call the colonial crossroads, a period where Mauritius truly began to be named, claimed, and transformed.
So who got there first?
Well, the first European encounters were with the Portuguese navigator Dom Pedro Mascarenhas, who visited in 1507 or maybe 1510.
Okay.
But they didn't perceive it as commercially interesting, apparently. So it was a pretty fleeting encounter.
So while mariners knew of the island, it wasn't really claimed until the Dutch arrived. The sources point to the 1598 expedition under Admiral Wybren van Warwick
Warwick, yeah.
as the first recorded landing near present-day Port Louis. They named the island Mauritius after Prince Maurice of Nassau, and later established the first European settlement in 1638. Was it then that sugarcane cultivation was introduced?
Precisely. The Dutch were the ones who first brought sugarcane to the island.
Okay.
However, their tenure was relatively brief, lasting about 130 years. They eventually abandoned the island.
Just packed up.
Pretty much, yeah. Took most of their slaves and seals with them. Interestingly, they had very little cohabitation with the indentured laborers they occasionally brought from places like Madagascar, West Africa, Indonesia, or India.
That's a key distinction, the cohabitation aspect.
Huh?
So, almost a century after the Dutch departure, the French arrived, formally colonizing the island in 1715.
Right.
I imagine their impact was far more significant, especially in terms of scale and ambition.
It was, definitely. The French rapidly expanded, creating vast sugar plantations, which, as you noted, demanded an enormous labor force.
Which
Led to the establishment of a massive slave trade. Our sources detail that by the time of the British takeover, around 100,000 enslaved people had been forcibly brought to the island.
100,000.
Yeah, from various African countries, Guinea, Senegal, Mozambique. This dramatically increased human diversity on the island, creating a truly mixed culture, but under horrific circumstances.
And with such structural segregation and daily discrimination, I imagine resistance must have been inevitable. How did that manifest on the plantations?
Indeed. The harsh conditions prompted significant slave revolts. What's crucial to understand is that through these struggles and the contacts among different groups, a common Black identity, rooted in their shared experience of oppression, began to develop. It was a powerful act of forging community in the face of immense hardship.
That's a profound layer to the island's formation. The next major shift came in 1810 when the British defeated the French, taking possession of the island.
Yep, the Napoleonic Wars reaching the Indian Ocean.
How did British rule change the social and economic landscape, particularly regarding labor?
Well, a very significant change under British rule was the abolition of slavery in 1834.
Right.
Driven by the grievances of the enslaved people and, shifting global sentiments. This, however, created a desperate search for a new labor source for the expanding sugar plantations.
Because the whole economy was built on sugar by then.
Pretty much. The solution came in the form of indentured laborers from India workers who voluntarily, though often under duress and exploitative contracts.
Right. Voluntarily needs a big asterisk there.
A very big one. Agreed to work for a set period in exchange for passage and a small wage.
So not slavery, but still a system with its own set of complexities and, exploitation.
Absolutely.
How many people did this bring to the island, and what was the lasting impact?
This recruitment continued for the next 70 years, bringing nearly 500,000 people to the island between 1834 and 1920.
500,000.
Yeah.
That completely reshaped the demographics.
Totally. This period, despite its own inherent challenges and exploitation, introduced a profoundly vibrant and multicultural aspect to the nation, weaving what one of our sources vividly calls a tapestry of colors.
That's a lovely phrase.
Isn't it? Under colonial rule, Mauritius truly flourished as a sugar colony, becoming one of the world's largest sugar producers and exporters by the end of the 19th century.
And Port Louis.
Port Louis also grew in importance as a naval base, especially after the opening of the Suez Canal in 1869, made it much more strategic.
Moving into the 20th century, Mauritius, despite its remote location, was deeply affected by global events. Our sources discuss how World War II, for example, had a profound impact.
Yeah, even way out there.
While the island was far from the European battlefields, the war in Europe reverberated deeply in the Indian Ocean, transforming the island's peaceful life into what one source describes as a roaring nightmare. What did that look like for everyday Mauritians?
Daily life was truly upended. Infrastructure was targeted, key supply lines were disrupted.
The real physical danger, too.
Oh, yeah. The island experienced air raids, rationing, and severe scarcity of fuel and gas. The disruptions were widespread and deeply felt. Makabu Road became a battlefield of destruction, apparently. An oil pipeline burnt out, L'Escalier Bridge blown up.
Wow. Not just distant echoes, then.
Not at all.
Yet, despite this hardship, the war also opened up opportunities for social and political change. It's fascinating how global conflicts, even when seemingly distant, can accelerate the dispersal of knowledge and stir aspirations for self-determination.
That's often the case, isn't it?
This period seems to have really set the stage for the path to self-governance.
Indeed. Against that backdrop, a series of reform measures were introduced in the late 1940s and 50s. Constitutional arrangements led to the first island-wide elections in 1959.
Okay.
With universal suffrage granted to 141,000 adult males, a massive jump from the mere 15,000 who could vote previously.
Huge expansion of the franchise.
Massive.
And then, on March 12, 1968, Mauritius became an independent sovereign state. This raises an interesting question. Was this purely a planned British decolonization, as was often presented? Or were there other geopolitical forces at play?
It's a good question. Our sources indicate it was more complex. While it was part of a broader British decolonization effort, the Mauritian prime minister later revealed it was also perceived as a gift from the Chinese government.
Really?
China!
Yeah, apparently to reduce dependence on British police, highlighting the intricate geopolitical currents and strategic maneuvering happening behind the scenes. Cold War context, you know.
That's a fascinating insight into the era. After independence, there was an initial commitment to multi-ethnicism and social cohesion.
Right.
But the sources also suggest this was quickly challenged. What happened?
Unfortunately, yeah. It was swiftly undermined as political parties began to form along ethnic lines, becoming a, quote, hot topic of debate among intellectuals and politicians.
So identity politics kicked in almost immediately.
It seems so. This shift, sadly, led to deeper mistrust between communities and highlighted the fragility of newly formed national identities.
So even with those internal challenges, it's truly remarkable how Mauritius managed to transition from one of the world's least developed countries in the early 1960s to an upper-middle income country today.
It really is astonishing.
It's often referred to as a miracle economy. What exactly were the key drivers behind that transformation?
Well, our sources point to a significant broadening of their economy from its sugar monocrop. That was key.
Diversification.
Exactly. They diversified into textiles and apparel production, agricultural commodity and food processing, global financial intermediation, and information and communications technology, or ICT.
Okay, a broad portfolio. But how did they manage to achieve such rapid, equitable growth, especially given those historical divisions you mentioned?
Well, while those factors are common to many successful nations, what our sources highlight is how Mauritius deliberately fostered a culture of consensus building.
Ah, okay.
Often through multi-ethnic political parties, which allowed its long-standing democracy to genuinely translate into inclusive economic policies and sustain stability, even in the face of deep historical divisions.
So the politics actually helped the economics, despite the ethnic lines.
In a way, yes, it forced compromise, perhaps. This rapid economic growth, high social and human development indicators, and relatively equitable income distribution are largely attributed to that unique blend of political stability and openness to foreign trade.
That's a crucial distinction, the deliberate fostering of consensus. So what does this miracle look like on the ground today? I imagine it results in a truly vibrant fabric of modern Mauritius, characterized by a mosaic of cultures and religions.
It absolutely does. Its intricate history of migration and conquest has shaped Mauritius into a cosmopolitan society where ethnic differences largely coexist.
Largely coexist.
Well, though sometimes, as our sources note, with underlying tensions, it's not perfect.
Fair enough.
The population is remarkably diverse, with 4 major ethnic groups. Indo-Mauritian, comprising about 68.5%.
The majority.
Yeah. Then Creole at 28.2%, Franco-Mauritian at 2.1%, and Sino-Mauritian at 1.3%.
That diversity is also profoundly reflected in the religious landscape. Hinduism is practiced by about 49% of the population, Christianity by 32%, and Islam by 17%.
A real mix.
And I love that their festivals truly mark the year. You'll see celebrations for everything from Taipusam Kavadi and Holi to Diwali, Shivaratri, Ganesh, Carnival, and Eid.
The calendar must be packed.
Right. The Constitution even guarantees freedom of worship and tolerance towards other religions, which is key to this coexistence.
Indeed, it's foundational. In terms of language, Mauritian Creole is the most widely spoken by about 61% of the population.
The lingua franca.
Pretty much. But many also use Bhojpuri, Hindi, Tamil, Urdu, or Chinese, with French and English used in specific contexts, like government and business for English. It's a truly multilingual society.
Beyond its cultural richness, I was really struck by the descriptions of Mauritius's unique natural features and how it's become such a tourism powerhouse.
Oh yeah, tourism is huge now.
From the mid-19th century, tourism grew, becoming an organized industry after 1947, largely linked to foreign investments and, of course, the renowned hospitality of its islanders.
There's certainly so much to discover beyond the beaches. You can explore historical sites in Port Louis, like the Citadel Fort, the Blue Penny Museum.
Ah, the famous stamps.
Exactly, with its rare stamps and shipwrecks, and the Apravasi Ghat Immigration Depot, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site that truly speaks to that indentured labor history.
A powerful site, I imagine.
Very.
And then there are those stunning natural attractions. The sources describe places like the 7-colored earths of Chamarel.
Oh, that place looks incredible.
A rare geological formation with distinct multicolored sands, and the near-perfect volcanic crater of Truosef, which looks like a pristine, almost mirror-like lake. It sounds like a photographer's dream.
It certainly is. However, despite all its progress and picturesque beauty, Mauritius, like any nation, faces contemporary challenges.
Right, it's not all paradise.
No. Our sources acknowledge persistent issues related to governance, corruption, ethics, and significant environmental concerns.
Like the forests.
Exactly. For instance, less than 1% of the original forest cover remains,
Less than 1%.
highlighting the immense conservation efforts needed, including native species reintroductions. Economic inequality also remains a challenge despite overall growth.
So, while there's a national aspiration for idyllic Mauritianism, that ideal of equality and comradeship among all ethnicities, the reality can sometimes be entrenched inequality and what one source calls unsolved crossword solutions representing public angst.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. There's still work to do, tensions under the surface.
It's a complex, evolving picture.
Yet there are very positive contemporary developments. The nation is becoming more diverse and tolerant, according to some sources, and the state effectively considers families of all shapes, including same-gender couples, as international travelers.
That's quite progressive.
It shows a genuinely progressive outlook on social inclusion, yeah.
And they're definitely not standing still economically. The focus is now on new industries like smart cities, the ocean economy, medical tourism, and the film industry to drive future growth.
Looking for the next wave.
It sounds like they're looking for the next miracle sectors.
Exactly. Ultimately, Mauritius is innovating to achieve sustainable development goals in economic growth, good governance, citizen empowerment, social cohesion, and environmental protection.
So it remains a really interesting place to watch.
Absolutely. This makes it a truly fascinating case study, offering valuable lessons for other culturally and ethnically diverse countries around the world.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for us? If Mauritius, a country forged by such diverse and sometimes challenging histories, can transform from an uninhabited volcanic island into a thriving multicultural nation,
Overcoming significant colonial legacies and economic hurdles.
what does that tell us about the complexities of nation building and social cohesion in a truly globalized world?
And what specific lessons can other diverse nations learn from its journey? Both its remarkable successes in fostering stability and growth, and, its ongoing struggles with deep-seated issues of identity and inequality.
We encourage you, the listener, to reflect on that delicate balance between national unity and the vibrant, sometimes contentious expression of diverse identities.
It's a journey that's far from over, and one that offers profound insights into what's possible for societies striving for both progress and peace.